So it's been over 6 months since PES 2020 came out, and as you can immediately tell, it looks way different right now.
The suddenness in which you can find yourself in a good position, or the suddenness in which it can go again. Fail! It's in!
This is the PC version, so almost everything's been modded at this point. It is by far the best looking version of the game, and you get to add a ton of stadiums including the Bernabeu and Anfield ported from last year's game, along with stadium-specific camera angles, and it all creates a worthy vehicle for the beautiful game unfolding on the pitch.
He's got away! Hazard clips one, has a goal!
So I thought it's probably time for a more detailed mid-year review of PES 2020, and also an excuse to use this new intro that I was saving for next year. For the most part, PES 2020 with its 6th update since launch does the best job getting the fundamentals of the game right, and that's dribbling, passing, and shooting. The superb shooting in PES 2020 is the result of the engine's accurate interpretation of realistic ball physics, which leads to satisfying ball trajectories en route to goal.
Goes for goal!
Like the way Keita's short leading run momentum gets transferred into his screamer.
Shot a goal!
Or the way Mane's ship gently floats into the net.
Mane!
This is all complemented by a wide range of shots available to certain players, like rising shots, which typically stay level while slowly rising. Those can be pulled off by releasing the left stick before aiming while sprinting.
It's Bale! Goal!
Another favorite of mine is the dipping shot trait, which James pulls off here.
Real chance!
Rising and dipping shots require player traits to produce them from open play, while any player can produce a powerful dipping shot with a first-time volley of a dropping ball.
And he's there to clear. Goes for goal!
There is probably no more satisfying shot to watch in PES 2020 than a properly executed long-range finesse shot.
Shot a goal!
When executed from long range, those shots require players with good curl and finishing attributes.
He'll hit it!
Most importantly, every effort needs to be taken to find your space and turn the player in the proper direction, which Modric does here in his last turn before taking the shot.
Goal scores, but he's had a go! It's a goal!
In this example, he neatly nutmegs his mark, but doesn't have enough time to face the goal, leading to a wayward finesse shot.
Has a pop!
In this one, Hazard decides to directly take the shot without adjusting his position,
Has a go!
while Isco manages to turn, but with little time for accurate placement from that distance.
Isco, it's Isco!
Oftentimes, your back is to the goal with no time to turn, but you can do a quick turn to face the goal by releasing directions and tapping the dash button like James does over here.
James and the shot!
And as a testimony to PES 2020's realistic method of transferring player momentum into the shot, you can achieve a looping variation of the finesse shot by killing off player momentum with a sudden turn right before taking a powerful shot from an almost standing position.
Modric. James Rodriguez hits one! Really well played.
Note how the ball loops over the keeper compared to the other finesse shot examples. By choosing advanced instead of basic shooting in PES 2020, you are afforded even more shooting variations by being able to deliberately target the low corners of the goal.
To the stands. Firmino!
This variation also works marvelously for finesse shots, like the low finesse Hazard takes here.
Hazard! And he's done it!
Making proper contact with the ball landing from behind a player takes into account the player's anticipation of receiving it. In this example, Benzema had just recovered from a backtrack run with little time to adjust for a volley with his weaker foot.
No, that was a chance. What a chance.
On the other hand, with good anticipation, he's able to comfortably pull off either a standard or advanced volley with his left foot.
Benzema hits one! Really well taken.
Players with the outside curler trait will convert shots on the weaker foot into a trivela with a strong foot, which Hazard pulls off here. but generally speaking, your shots with a weaker foot have a lower chance of hitting the target, as do the shots that you take with a defender closely breathing down your neck.
Their season. Gets the better of his man, has a pop! A potential goal of the season contender.
Although as in real life, your star players can miss easy shots with perfect circumstances. That said, the game does a good job of encouraging you to take a shot, no matter how unlikely scoring might seem.
If he gets his head, oh, shooting chance!
Notice here how Salah does this thing where he uses his first touch to swiftly turn over his mark and face the goal.
Looking for goal!
And here's a special shout out to the animation of the defender guarding the ball mid-air with his hands behind his back. A player's first touch can make all the difference in PES 2020, especially with your back to the goal.
He's away! Firmino hits one! He's delivered!
And you can see how smoothly Hazard takes on the last defender with a single touch taken in stride.
And he's away! He's through! It's 1-0! Has a goal! Goal!
I love how, like in real life, a first touch can rid you from a defender without using flashy skills.
Isco hits one! Goal!
This is possible thanks to a realistic simulation of player momentum, making ball pushers more effective in creating openings.
Loose, who's getting... Oh, real danger here! He's had a shot!
And it's this smooth combination of non-obtrusive first touches, proper player momentum, and shooting physics, which creates a satisfying, rewarding dribbling experience,
And the shot!
where players can realistically find their way through opponents by timing their strides and using a low center of gravity to perform calculated small movements en route to goal.
Mohamed Salah tries one!
This low center of gravity can also allow you to flick a first touch and flip your mark inside out as he makes a slower turn.
Facade, absolutely distinctive, place out on it. Real chance! He's delivered!
Player momentum is best demonstrated in how players with bursting acceleration can leave their marks in the dust by speeding past them, or by swiftly changing direction, especially when done while their marks are turning.
He's got away. Got a sight of goal here. Shoots!
Finally, it's safe to say that the disastrous poor ball control of Datapack 5.0 has been completely removed in Datapack 6. I love how Genie actually runs towards his own half to lose the defender before making a run to the goal. And if you've been watching him IRL, you know it's a realistic move he pulls off every now and then. Player stamina plays a huge role, as the freshly introduced Origi is able to run past the tired defender and set up Salah for a last-minute winner. And keep an eye on the tired far defender who can't keep up with Salah, who finds himself left wide open.
He's got away. He's in. Big chance!
But often, as in real life, it takes more than a subtle touch or a smart dribble to get past the player.
Has a pop!
And that's where skills play a secondary role in PES 2020.
All glued to his feet. Jovic! Goal!
I actually find the subtleness of skills in PES to be way more appealing than the other game's circus-like dribbling, which doesn't really appeal to me at all. And the way a shoulder drop can send your opponent in the wrong direction does a better job of mimicking real-life dribbling.
Got a foul? Yeah.
This is the first year finesse dribbling has been introduced in PES, so it's bound to improve and become more accessible in the coming years. But when it works, it's nothing short of magnificent, and can open up punishing goal-scoring opportunities.
At the moment, predictability. It's Asa! What a...
But generally in PES, as in real life, using your player's changes in momentum alongside calculated ball pushes is the best way to get past your opponent, which brings me to crossing. I wasted the first few months trying to score headers using a standard cross. It never really worked, and I had problems getting good contact with the ball. I thought I scored once, only to see it was actually an own goal. This all changed when I switched back to crossing using the through lob, which is what I used to do back in 2018.
Left. Header! Goal!
The beauty of headers in PES compared to their counterparts in FIFA lies in the accurate ball physics and how it responds to the force generated by a player's body movement in the air. For example, in this play, Matip towers high over the defense and only needs to meet the ball, which realistically bounces off his head into the goal. On the other hand, look at how Salah contorts his body to generate the power needed to attack the ball floating in from behind, while Casemiro needs to move forward and a little lower to direct it to the far corner.
It's in!
In this example, Bale directs the shot the same way, but only using his neck since the feet are on the ground.
In it goes!
Generally speaking, it's best to avoid crossing with the weaker foot,
Bale, up to meet it!
like the way Shaqiri turns back to use his stronger foot.
Has a hit!
And this is the first year I've actually preferred to use the through lob even for first-time crosses.
Another chance!
And if the cross is low enough and you take a few steps away from it, you can meet it with a bicycle kick instead.
Oh. Has a goal!
But timing is everything and you will be penalized for a late power-up on a header.
Well, it's been an absolutely fabulous spell.
I actually only used the lob button in 2 situations this year. The first are corner kicks, whose headers look great when they happen, but are too infrequent and difficult to nail. There's actually something very satisfyingly realistic about the messy way players charge into the box to compete for a header. The second situation is a free kick into the box, which actually worked better than it ever did before.
And a header!
And if your eyes are on your attacker's runs, you can always spot them with a double tap for a low cross into the box.
Swept, shot a goal!
And here Trent performs an L2 1-2 pass to make space for another low cross into the box.
He slid it, shoots!
I actually do an L2 pass to send my fullbacks pushing forward by holding up the ball while they make their runs.
Run from a defender. He's got away. And the shot!
So yeah, after figuring things out, I'm very satisfied with the crossing mechanics in PES 2020.
Junior, great leap! And
As expected, those smooth mechanics carry over into passing, where the game encourages you to build your attack by finding your teammates and working towards each player's strengths to find the back of the net.
oh, good. Has a hit! There it is!
The wealth of passing animations maintains a satisfying fluidity to the gameplay of PES 2020.
Modric. Decent looking ball. Mendy.
Where a player's strong foot plays a role in selecting the type of passing animation, with accurate corresponding ball physics closely tied to it.
Benzema. Oh, it hits one!
So a left-footed player like Bale would curl in his through pass with the outside of his foot.
It's there!
And as with every year, ball physics shine the most when performing long-distance passes. Look at how crisp Kroos's through ball looks here.
Kroos with a long pass. Gets away from his opponent.
And while occasionally you will get inaccurate through lobs that aren't deep enough, you don't need to switch to manual lobs to reach behind the defense.
Plenty of time to get back. Big chance! And yes!
I've never been good with manual passing or advanced through passes, but they seem to be the best solution against these mediocre through passes you occasionally encounter in the game.
Cuts it out.
But unlike FIFA, you will be penalized more harshly when passing in awkward directions, or when inadequately filling the power bar. In this play, Benzema takes a brilliant first touch before spotting Isco's run through the defense.
Going for goal!
By tapping the through button a second time, you can create a decoy initial through pass animation that fools the defender to prematurely block it. So yeah, great passing mechanics won't mean much without good player runs to look out for, which is another area where attacking in PES truly shines with many piercing runs made towards the goal.
It's Salah! They've scored!
Like this attempt which Hart blocks, which brings me to the goalkeepers this year. I've already exhaustively discussed keepers in my main review from 6 months ago, and it was probably the most impressive part of the review, especially their ability to modify their animations on the fly. Well, this impression has continued to a large extent over the past several months, with several close-range, godly saves routinely pulled off, including several in a row.
On the balls, it's come back out!
I actually feel that their recovery is sometimes too superhuman, like how this keeper doesn't even settle from his fall before getting up to push the ball away.
And that's been one straight pass.
Although this unnatural recovery isn't always the case.
In he goes again!
And even though Trent clearly isn't intentionally passing the ball to Ali, Look how he smoothly modifies his animation to clear the ball with his head to avoid a free kick. I love how keepers realistically go down to maximize their chance at blocking close-range shots. Good keepers will appropriately run out to counter even far crosses or deeper through lobs, then run back to block incoming shots. Although there's always the risk of conceding with an empty goal, which is also quite realistic with teams stacked with great finishers.
Fires from distance.
And speaking of keepers pushing forward, I love how they can join attack during desperate times like the final few seconds of a knockout game, although I'm yet to see them actually score. For one-on-one situations as in previous years, I feel you have the best chance at blocking the shot by exiting the goal but then stopping before the shot is made without being too far that you'd get lobbed.
Oh, it's Aguero! It's Aguero!
The one-arm saves look great and have improved a lot, but they still don't happen as often as they should. And in case you're wondering, yes, this should have been a penalty, which brings me to the negative part of the review.
Great strength, too strong for his opponent.
Even though Knightmd just fixed this with their last update, I actually made a video about how the referee would ignore fouls by the AI if they happened in the penalty box, instead of awarding you a penalty. This had actually been an issue for several years now.
There's too much flesh and bone in his path.
But the good news is, I think they fixed it with Data Pack 6.0, and I'm actually quite happy with the penalty calls now that the referee will no longer shy away from calling them. I love how you get to aim your ball pushes right before being tackled, and it almost feels alien to score a penalty against the AI for the first time in years. Another issue that has been fixed was the lack of straight reds in one-on-one tackles from behind, which bothered me even though it sometimes wasn't my advantage.
He's got through. What's he getting?
This was also handled by Data Pack 6.0, and no, it's not just Ramos who gets the red cards. This actually works against the AI now.
He's come over. It's a red card.
Although there is still a lack of yellow cards in the game, especially when bringing down a player on the break. There are other issues that have persisted though since my first review. While advantage play works well for the most part, the referee will still literally forget about awarding a foul if nobody touches the ball, even though he's already registered it as a foul.
Look, this can still go either way. It might be flowing one way, but there's...
I mean, sometimes it makes sense for him to allow play to continue with a high chance of scoring.
He's had a shot!
And this other problem happens a lot. A player is fouled, but the foul isn't given because the ball lands with an offside player. So an offside call is given instead, even though the referee registered the foul that happened before it. I mean, you can literally see the referee's animation change to give the offside call after he registered a foul. This issue is very irritating given how easy it is to score free kicks in PES 2020, so much that oftentimes my best chance at winning a game is getting a free kick near the box. I found myself able to score from free kicks that are too close to the box or too far using the knuckle shot trait, and even from far free kicks with tight angles, and from free kicks cast to the side.
Oh, how good is...
I think the problem with not awarding those free kicks during a given advantage is that the offside call in the game engine happens the moment the player passes the ball, and not when the offside receiver touches it, which is the way an offside call is given in real life. So the referee in PES ends up going for what happened first according to the game engine. You can see it better in this example. Hazard gets fouled before Bale, but instead of awarding Bale a penalty, he penalizes the first infraction. On the other hand, sometimes the referee awards a foul for tackles that actually show the player getting to the ball first. These non-foul calls are game-changing, as they can result in a free kick which is easy to score from in this year's game. I think this is happening because of the new collision engine in this year's game, where the second impact to the player after taking out the ball first gets interpreted as a separate foul. And while this new collision engine can result in realistic mid-air battles for the ball, it also led to many fouls not being called at all by the referee.
And they're not going to make any further progress now. Alaves getting a lot of...
Sometimes several times in a row. Like here, Isco gets fouled, and a minute later, Carvalho gets fouled with no cause given in both instances. And here Benzema gets taken out with no repercussions. And then you have collisions resulting from follow-through animations. For instance, Son kicks Varane in the nuts while following through a through-pass animation, but he gets a foul awarded. But then when Varane takes out a player while following through from the pass, he gets a foul against him and a yellow card. This can change the course of the game, as referees have no idea what collisions constitute a foul and what does not. And while this is a physical sport, you should not be allowed to pull back a player, something that defenders can blatantly get away with this year.
Kolasinac still waiting for the first goal.
Other minor issues on my wish list include maybe calling handballs next year,
Looking to get within range.
especially since defenders already hold their hands behind their back when meeting a cross. Also, it would be sweet to have a goal line technology cutscene to add a little more enjoyment to the game. FIFA actually already has this, but it is a hilariously inaccurate afterthought.
Look, this can still go either way. It might be flowing one way, but
Another issue with collisions is more about running into your own teammates. Players seem to be adamant to run on their predetermined paths regardless of where I'm headed. It would be helpful if a yielding animation, which is already in the game, was used so my teammates would allow me to continue on my path. So I don't need to dodge my own teammates en route to goal.
Shot at goal!
This issue of lack of ball awareness can be funny as this clueless player gets smacked in the head. But it can also change the outcome of a game and lead to undeserved goals being scored.
now it's Mohamed Salah going for goal. They've done it.
As well as several being conceded needlessly when they could have been interrupted early on.
Real chance!
And that's separate from the previously reported issues of balls passing through defenders.
It's Alexis Sanchez!
Player switching is still not perfect,
Rashford plays it out to the flank. Pogba going for goal!
we simply need better player awareness of the ball and of other players in this game's algorithm. Continuing with the negatives, and despite the already good player runs into the box being made this year,
Has a hit! Goal!
players will unnaturally stop running on their own, leading to several stray passes and an interrupted flow of play. This same issue has plagued through lobs too, as a targeted player will slow down instead of powering through when the through lob is made. It's far from the norm though, and you'll still be able to make inch-perfect through lobs behind the defense with the correct power selected. Oh, and this defender isn't just jumping for show.
Breakthrough. One.
These jumps can actually make a difference, as you can see how the defender's jump interferes with Hazard's anticipation of the shot. Defending in PES is mostly about proper anticipation. Like here, I sent Ramos to the player more likely to receive the ball. Unlike this defender who rushes forward and leaves Hazard open to score.
There's still a chance for one last fling. He shapes to shoot!
Anticipation should be coupled with calling a second defender to steal back the ball.
Pratt.
Although you do run the risk of leaving a player unmarked.
He spotted the run. Centimeter!
You can try to anticipate lower tier defenders' mistakes who tend to make wrong turns that you can take advantage of.
Really alert to the danger. Shapes to shoot! In for the pieces!
Which highlights the importance of a high press in this year's game.
Oh, that is asking for trouble. And this is Firmi. Has a hit!
This is a separate tactic from the Gengen press, which can also lead to the balls being gifted back to you.
Opportunity to turn. Shapes to shoot!
Defenders will also take too long to close down on you, like here where I feel they had ample opportunity to block Mane's shot. Or in this one, the defender's block animation still leaves the goal open.
Going for goal!
And while defenders do a pretty good job clearing the ball off the line and putting bodies between your player and the goal, I don't like how they seem more concerned about running to their predetermined spots instead of trying to intercept a run.
Hazard. Shot at goal!
Wait a second, why did Busquets slow down to allow Benzema to proceed unmarked?
And it's played forward.
Here Mane makes quick work of his mark and is left to run to the goal. Instead of rushing to intercept Mane, this defender stays with Firmino, who already has a defender on him, while this third defender has been programmed to just run back to a predetermined spot instead of marking Salah.
Mane, he's gone for it!
And in this example, the defender actually runs away from Salah instead of trying to intercept his run. And why is this defender backing off of Hazard when he could have covered this area which Hazard pushes into before scoring?
It's Asa!
And since we're covering the negatives in defense, keepers seem to prefer to push a looping ball dangerously back into play rather than trying to push it over the crossbar. I've actually scored several goals this way, and it always looks like the keeper would be able to generate enough power to push it over the crossbar instead.
Going through. Header! In for the pieces! He's delivered all right!
And yes, they still run straight at the player's first position instead of adjusting their exit to where the ball is when you're moving diagonally. And remember how impressive Ali's transition to a header was when Trent returned the ball? Well, the keepers will actually refuse to touch a ball coming back from a defender, which makes them concede own goals that seem to be preventable if their otherwise superhuman reactions were at their disposal. And I'd rather they conceded a free kick by making a save than just let the ball in. But overall, the keepers remain to be a strong point in this year's game, and here's a shout out to Carvalho's animation as he falls down while keeping his eye on the ball. Actually, the game has many other beautiful touches in terms of animation, like how Bale extends his foot to push the ball on the rise.
Big chance!
Although I have no idea why Benzema attempts the same shot instead of heading the ball. There is room for improvements with falling animations, as I feel Kroos's foot should have been held back when he was tackled.
Frustration of being denied a clear opportunity.
And I don't like how the player celebration cutscene is separate from what's happening on the pitch. And sometimes foot planting has some sliding to it. It doesn't seem much that this year's game is the best looking, and it is, but what you've been seeing in this review is a heavily modded version of the game.
Goes for goal!
I'm talking about over 100 stadiums that modders added to the PC version of the game, starting from the smallest teams to the biggest in Europe. Even though some custom animated ad boards have been ported from last year's game. I've also added a ton of licensed ball mods that are also available on the PC version only, as well as competition-specific scoreboards that match the gameplay's realism. Oh, and the kits have also been modded to look tighter, since all the players looked fat in the default baggy kits.
He's left his man!
I've also replaced the fluorescent default grass seen here, as Hazard finds his way through the defense
This could fall anyone! It's Asa!
with a more realistic grass tone that mimics the Frostbite engine version, courtesy of Macadam 14.
The delivery wasn't. Has a pop!
I've also painstakingly recreated every single camera angle from English and Spanish stadiums using Nisa Induce's camera tool, since the game developers insist on making the broadcast camera uneditable for some reason. While some are more playable than others, I feel that PES's gameplay is too realistic to be played from a standard angle. Oh, and be sure to like this video and subscribe to be the first to know when those camera angles are released.
Could fall kindly!
Speaking of the camera, I don't like how late it changes back to gameplay view after taking a free kick. It's a shame and needlessly mimics FIFA, since free kicks are beautiful goals to look at. And I'd prefer if the camera switched back before the player made his run, or at least right before he took the shot, the way it did back in 2016 and 2017's games, where I got to better appreciate the beautiful ball trajectory. Finally, I've also added stadium intro music,
Massive interest in these parts.
as well as a ton of crowd chants for all the teams courtesy of Predator.
He's had a shot!
He also made the Embassy TV scoreboard you can see here. They certainly enhance this beautiful game's atmosphere, so I'll leave you to listen to it and see you in the next video.
Now it's Mohamed Salah. Going through. Oh, real danger here. Chooses to go back. Has a pop!